The doors of the council chamber close behind me like a verdict already decided. I stand alone in the center of a circular room built for judgment, not conversation. 9 species sit above me in tiered seats, made of dark metal and cold light, and every one of their eyes, or sensors, or whatever they use to see, is pointed straight at me. My name is Ethan Cole. 3 weeks ago I was a scout pilot with a clean record and a quiet life. Today I am the only survivor of a mission that no one on this council wants to believe happened. "State your account again," says the presiding officer, a tall being named Counselor Drayan, his voice flat and metallic through the translator strapped to his throat. "For the final record. I have already told this story 4 times. Each time, they have looked at me the same way, like a man watching a machine that is malfunctioning, but too polite to say so out loud. I was assigned to Scout Team 9, I begin. Our mission was a routine survey of the fringe system Calvec 7. Myself, Commander Nora Bennett, and 2 coalition escorts from the Threll delegation. We were not expecting contact. We were expecting rock samples and radiation readings. And yet you claim you found something else," Drayan says, cutting in before I can continue. "I did not claim it," I say, keeping my voice steady. "I recorded it. My logs recorded it. My ship's systems recorded it, until the moment they stopped working entirely. A ripple moves through the chamber, not quite sound, more like a shift in temperature. I know what they are thinking. Human technology does not simply stop working around unknown phenomena. Human minds are not supposed to remain calm in situations that erase all their instruments. I am the wrong kind of witness for the story I am telling, and that is exactly why no one believes me." "You are asking this council," says a smaller delegate near the back, her voice sharp with something close to contempt, "to accept that your species encountered an artifact of unknown origin, that it responded to your presence specifically, and that this event somehow erased the very evidence that could prove it. Do you understand how convenient that sounds?" "I understand exactly how it sounds," I answer. "I have had 3 weeks to think about how it sounds. That does not change what happened." Counselor Drayan leans forward. Behind him, a holographic display flickers to life, showing a fragmented image. My last transmission before contact was lost. It is grainy, incomplete, more static than substance. It proves nothing. It disproves nothing either. That is the exact problem. "This is what you offer us," he says. "A broken signal and a story only you can tell, since your crew did not survive to confirm it." The words land harder than he probably intends. Nora Bennett was not just my commanding officer. She was the reason I made it back at all. Saying her name like she is a missing piece of evidence instead of a person makes something tighten in my chest, but I do not let it show. Not here, not in front of them. "Commander Bennett gave her life so that I could bring this report back to you," I say. "I would like that fact to be remembered, whether or not you believe the rest of it." Silence follows. Not agreement, just silence. A different voice speaks now, calmer, older, coming from the far side of the chamber. This is Ambassador Kieran, one of the few delegates who has not yet spoken against me. Her species communicates in low, resonant tones that always sound like they are choosing each word with great care. "Pilot Cole," she says, "you understand our difficulty. Humanity has been part of this coalition for 11 years. In that time, your species has been observed, tested, and in many cases, restrained. There are members of this council who believe humans exaggerate danger to justify aggressive action. There are others who believe the opposite, that you conceal danger to appear more capable than you are. Your report touches both fears at once. I am not asking you to trust my species," I say. "I am asking you to look at what actually happened at Calvec 7. "Then tell us plainly," Kieran says. "No embellishment. What did you find?" I take a breath. This is the part where their faces always change, where sympathy turns into suspicion. "We found a structure," I say, "not built by any known species in this coalition, buried beneath the ice of a moon with no atmosphere and no reason for anyone to visit it. Inside that structure was an object, small enough to hold in 2 hands, old enough that our scanners could not date it. It did nothing when the Threll escorts approached it. It did nothing when Commander Bennett approached it. When I approached it, it activated. Activated how? Drayan asks, his patience thinning. Light, I say, not visible light. A field our instruments barely registered before they failed completely. And in that moment, every alarm on our ship went off at once, not because of danger, but because every system detected the same signal simultaneously, like something was being recorded, or replayed, or witnessed. I do not have better words for it. I was not given a manual. A few of the delegates exchanged glances. I cannot read their expressions, but I recognize discomfort when I see it, regardless of the shape of the face wearing it. "And where is this object now?" asks the sharp-voiced delegate again. "Recovered," I say, "sealed in a containment unit aboard the return vessel, exactly as protocol required. It has not responded to any test performed on it since. Not one. It is, as far as every scientist who has examined it can tell, completely inert." "Convenient," she repeats, the same word as before, like it is the only weapon she has, and she intends to use it until it breaks. I feel something rise in me, not anger exactly, more like exhaustion, mixed with the effort of staying calm, in a room built to make me lose that calm. I press it down. I have learned, over 3 weeks of interrogation, that the moment I raise my voice is the moment they stop listening to my words and start watching my tone instead. "I understand this is difficult to accept," I say. "I am not asking for sympathy. I am asking this council to treat my report the way it would treat any report, human or otherwise. Evaluate the evidence available and decide accordingly. If that evidence is insufficient, then say so. But do not accuse me of fabrication when the only thing I have gained from this mission is the loss of someone I respected and a room full of people who assume I am lying." Drayan studies me for a long moment. Then he turns to the other delegates, speaking not to me now but past me, like I have already become a subject rather than a participant. "This council will suspend Pilot Cole's active status pending formal review," he announces. "His testimony will be logged, but not accepted as verified fact. The artifact in question will remain in Coalition custody under joint observation. And Commander Bennett's sacrifice," I say, before I can stop myself. "Does that get logged as well, or does that also require verification?" The chamber goes quiet again, longer this time. Ambassador Kieran looks at me with something that might be sympathy, or might simply be curiosity about how far I will push before I stop. "Your service is noted, Pilot Cole," Drayan says finally, his tone unreadable. "This session is concluded." Guards, if that is even the right word for the tall, silent beings flanking the chamber's exit, step forward to escort me out. I do not resist. There is no point. As I walk past the tiers of seats, past faces that range from indifferent to hostile, I catch Ambassador Kieran watching me with an expression I cannot quite name. It is not belief, but it is not dismissal either. It is something closer to a question she has not decided how to ask yet. Outside the chamber, the corridor stretches long and white under artificial light that never quite matches the color of a real sun. I stop for a moment, resting a hand against the cold wall, letting the tension in my shoulders finally show now that no one important is watching. A voice speaks behind me, quiet, careful. That could have gone worse. I turn to see a young officer I do not recognize, human, wearing Coalition insignia I have not seen before. She has short brown hair and eyes that look like they have not slept properly in days, which makes 2 of us. "Could it?" I say. "They didn't dismiss you outright," she says. "They could have. Drayan wanted to. I heard it in the pre-session briefing." "Who are you?" I ask, too tired to be polite about it. "Officer Lena Marsh," she says. "I was assigned to review the technical data from your mission. What's left of it, anyway?" Something in her voice catches my attention, a kind of careful precision, like she is choosing her next sentence the way a person chooses where to step on unstable ground. "You found something," I say. She glances down the corridor, checking that we are alone, before answering. I found an anomaly in the containment readings from the artifact, she says. Something that doesn't match inert behavior. I haven't reported it yet. I wanted to talk to you first. For the first time since I stepped off that ship 3 weeks ago, I feel something other than exhaustion or frustration. I feel the smallest thread of hope, thin and fragile but real. Then talk, I say. She hesitates only a second before speaking again, and in that hesitation, I understand that whatever she is about to tell me, it is going to change everything the Council thinks it already knows. Lena Marsh does not speak again until we are 3 levels down, inside a maintenance corridor that smells faintly of coolant and old metal. She checks the hallway twice before she finally faces me. I need you to understand something first, she says. What I found could get me removed from this project. Maybe worse. So before I show you anything, I need to know you're not going to repeat this without my permission. You have my word, I say. She studies me for a moment, like she is deciding whether a human's word means anything in a place like this. Then she pulls out a small data slate and taps through several layers of security before showing me a scan. This is the containment chamber holding the artifact, she says. Standard readings, nothing unusual, exactly what the official report says. Inert, no energy signature, no activity. That matches what I already know, I say. Now look at this. She swipes to another file. The image is nearly identical, except for a faint pulse in the corner of the readout, so small it would be easy to dismiss as sensor noise. That pulse repeats every 11 hours, she says. Always the same duration, always the same shape. It is not noise, it is a pattern. I feel my pulse quicken. Does anyone else know about this? No, she says, and that's the problem. If I report it through normal channels, it goes straight to Drayan's office, and given how this council already feels about your report, they will bury it or explain it away before anyone outside their circle even sees it. Then why show me? I ask. She hesitates again, and this time I understand the hesitation is not about trust. It is about fear. Because I ran a secondary analysis, she says. I compared the pulse pattern to your ship's final data burst, the one recorded seconds before your systems failed at Calvec 7. They match, Ethan, not similar, identical. The corridor feels colder suddenly, though nothing around us has changed. You're saying the artifact is still active, I say slowly. I'm saying it never stopped, she says. It just stopped speaking loud enough for standard scans to notice. Whatever happened to you out there, whatever it saw or recorded or however it works, it's still running, right now, sealed inside a box, 3 levels above your council hearing, and nobody in that chamber has any idea. I think back to the moment on Calvec 7, the way the artifact had reacted only when I stood close enough to touch it, how Nora and the Threll escorts had stood beside it without effect. I think of the alarms, the failing systems, the strange certainty I felt in that instant that something was paying attention to me specifically, not to the ship, not to the mission, to me. There's something else, Lena says, her voice dropping lower. The pulse isn't random. I ran it against known coalition communication protocols, ancient archive formats, even pre-coalition records from species long extinct. Nothing matches directly. But there's a resemblance to fragments recovered from the Vesserine ruins, the ones the coalition catalogued almost 200 years ago and then sealed under restricted access. I've never heard of the Vesserine, I admit. Most people haven't, she says. Officially, they were an early spacefaring species that vanished before recorded coalition history began. Unofficially, there are rumors that the coalition's founding species knew more about their disappearance than they ever documented. That artifact, Ethan, might be older than every civilization currently sitting in that council chamber. I let that sink in, the size of it, the strangeness of holding something that predates the very organization now refusing to believe my account of it. Why would something that old activate for me? I ask, more to myself than to her. Not for Nora, not for the Threll escorts. Just me. I don't know, Lena says, But I think that question is exactly why Drayan wants this whole matter closed quietly. If the artifact really is choosing to respond to something specific about you, or about humans in general, that raises questions this council isn't ready to answer. Questions about why humanity was invited into the coalition in the first place, and what certain founding members might already suspect about your species that they've never told you. A cold understanding settles over me. This was never just about whether they believed my report. It was about controlling what my report might reveal if it turned out to be true. "What do you need from me?" I ask. "Time," she says, "and access. I can't get near that containment chamber without authorization, and after today's hearing, you're the last person they'll let anywhere near it. But there might be another way." I'm listening. "The official inquiry isn't finished," she explains. "As part of due process, they're required to bring in independent technical review before final judgment. That review board isn't fully assembled yet. If I can get myself assigned to it, and if you can convince at least one sympathetic council member to request a secondary demonstration before the case is closed, we might have a narrow window to force the artifact's behavior into the open record, where Drayan can't quietly bury it." I think of Ambassador Kieran, the way she looked at me before I left the chamber, not with belief, but with something unresolved. "I might know someone," I say. Lena nods slowly. "Then, we don't have much time. 11 hours from now, that pulse will happen again. If we can get proper instruments on it when it does, we have a chance to prove this isn't fabrication. If we can't, they will finish sealing this whole incident away before the next hearing even begins." We start walking again, faster now, the quiet urgency of a plan forming between two people who have every reason to distrust the system around them and very little reason to trust each other, yet find themselves with no better option. As we move through the lower levels of the station, I think about Nora, about the way she had reached out toward the artifact just before the alarms went off, not out of fear, but curiosity, the same curiosity that had made her a good commander and a better friend. I think about the promise I made to bring back the truth of what happened to her, and how that promise now depends on convincing a room full of skeptical beings that an ancient, silent object is not as silent as it appears. We reach a service lift near the edge of the technical wing. Lena keys in a code, and the doors slide open onto a narrow platform overlooking rows of secured storage units, dozens of sealed containers stretching into shadow. "There," she says, pointing toward a chamber near the far wall, marked with warning symbols in 3 different coalition languages. "That's where they're keeping it." I stare at the container, small and unremarkable from this distance, and it is strange to think that something so plain could be the center of a controversy large enough to shake an entire governing council. How do we get a sympathetic council member down here without triggering every security protocol in the building? I ask. "We don't bring them down here," Lena says. "We bring the readings up to them, undeniable, time-stamped, verified by independent instruments they can check themselves. If Kieran is willing to stake her reputation on requesting a formal demonstration, we do this in the open, in front of the full council, where Drayan can't quietly erase it afterward." "And if she isn't willing," I say. Lena looks at me, her expression steady despite the risk clearly weighing on her. "Then we're back to a broken signal and a story only you can tell," she says. "And this time, they'll make sure no one ever gets close enough to prove otherwise." I look back at the sealed container, small, quiet, patient, holding inside it either the proof that will clear my name or the confirmation that I truly am as unreliable as they believe. "Then I need to speak with Ambassador Kieran tonight," I say, "before that pulse happens again." Lena nods, already moving toward the lift controls. 11 hours, she says. "Let's not waste a single one of them." As the lift doors close and we begin our ascent back toward the diplomatic levels of the station, I feel the weight of everything ahead of us, the risk to Lena's position, the risk to whatever trust I have left with this council, and beneath it all, the quiet, persistent question that refuses to leave my mind. Why me? Out of everyone who stood in that frozen chamber on Calvex 7, why had the artifact chosen to answer only to me, And what exactly was it trying to say? Ambassador Kieran's private quarters sit at the highest level of the diplomatic wing, a section of the station reserved for beings whose decisions carry weight far beyond their own species. I have never been invited there before. Getting an audience without an official request takes every favor Lena can call in and a message worded carefully enough to avoid triggering any automatic security review. When the door opens, Kieran stands alone, her tall frame silhouetted against a window showing the slow turn of stars outside. She does not look surprised to see me, which tells me she expected this visit long before I decided to make it. "Pilot Cole," she says, "this is an unusual hour for a conversation." "I wouldn't be here if it weren't urgent," I say. She studies me for a long moment before stepping aside, allowing me into the room. Lena remains near the entrance, her data slate held close, ready but silent, letting me lead. "You have 11 hours before something happens that could prove my report true," I say, deciding there is no benefit in easing into this slowly. The artifact recovered from Calvec 7 is not inert. It emits a pulse on a fixed interval, one that matches the exact signal recorded during the incident that killed Commander Bennett. If independent instruments capture that pulse under verified conditions in front of the full council, no one will be able to dismiss it as fabrication again. Kieran's expression does not change immediately, but something behind her eyes sharpens. "That is a serious claim," she says, "and an even more serious risk, if you are wrong." "I understand the risk," I say. "I am not asking you to believe me blindly. I am asking you to request a formal, monitored demonstration before this council closes my case. If I am wrong, the demonstration proves nothing, and you have lost only a small amount of time. If I am right, this council learns the truth before Councillor Drayan has the chance to bury it." "You believe Drayan intends to suppress this," Kieran says, not quite a question. "I believe someone does," I say, "and given how quickly he moved to seal my case today, I have reason to suspect it is him." Kieran turns toward the window, quiet for a long moment, watching the slow drift of distant light. "There are things about this coalition you do not yet understand, Pilot Cole," she says finally. "Humanity is young, in coalition terms, younger than any species that founded this council. There has always been a question among the older members about why your species was granted membership so quickly, given how unpredictable you can be. Some believe it was generosity, others believe it was caution, a decision made because certain founding members recognized something in humanity they did not wish to leave unwatched." "What does that have to do with the artifact?" I ask. "Perhaps everything," she says. "Perhaps nothing. That is precisely why I have not yet decided whether to help you." Lena steps forward slightly, breaking her silence. "Ambassador, with respect, the longer this council avoids the question, the more it looks like avoidance rather than caution. If the artifact is truly linked to something the founding species have hidden, refusing to examine it openly does not protect the coalition. It only protects whoever benefits from the secret staying buried." Kieran looks at her with quiet appraisal, as if reconsidering the weight of the room's occupants. "You are the technical officer assigned to review the containment data," she says. "Yes, Ambassador. And you risk your position by being here." "Yes, Ambassador." Kieran allows the smallest trace of something like respect to cross her expression. "Then you understand risk better than most who serve on this station." She turns back to me, her decision settling into her posture before she even speaks it aloud. "I will request the demonstration," she says. "But understand this, Pilot Cole. If nothing happens when that pulse is expected, I will not be able to protect you from what follows. Drayan already believes you fabricated your account. A failed demonstration, staged at my request, will confirm that belief for the entire council, and I will not be able to shield either of us from the consequences." "I accept that," I say, though the words carry more weight than I let show on my face. "Then we have very little time," Kieran says. "I will submit the formal request within the hour. Officer Marsh, I will need your technical readings prepared for independent verification, untouched by any system Drayan's office controls." Already prepared, Ambassador, Lena says, holding up her data slate. Kieran nods once, satisfied, before her expression shifts into something more cautious. There is one more matter you should know before this moves forward. Counselor Drayan has already begun quiet efforts to discredit your remaining supporters. My stomach tightens. What do you mean? The Threll escorts who accompanied your mission, she says. They gave partial statements corroborating portions of your account shortly after your return. I have learned that Drayan's office contacted them separately within the last day, requesting they revise their statements before the review board finalizes its findings. Revise them how? I ask, though I already suspect the answer. To align more closely with the official position that your report cannot be verified, Kieran says. It is not an order, it is phrased as guidance. But among the Threll, guidance from a senior council member carries significant pressure. Anger rises in me, sharper than anything I felt in the chamber earlier, not because I am surprised, but because it confirms something I had only suspected until now. This was never simply about evidence. It was about controlling the outcome before the evidence could even be examined fairly. I need to speak with them, I say. That would be unwise, Kieran says. Any contact between you and witnesses under review will be seen as an attempt to influence testimony. It will damage your position far more than it helps. Then what do? I ask, frustration slipping into my voice for the first time since this began. You wait, Kieran says, and you trust that truth, when demonstrated clearly enough, does not require witnesses willing to risk everything to speak it. It only requires proof strong enough that no one can comfortably deny it. I do not fully believe her, not yet, but I understand she is offering the only path forward that does not collapse the fragile arrangement we have just built. Kieran moves to a small terminal near the window and begins composing her formal request, her fingers moving with practiced precision across controls unfamiliar to me. Lena steps closer, watching the process carefully, occasionally offering technical clarification when Kieran's phrasing risks being too vague for the review board to act on quickly. I stand near the window, watching the stars turn slowly outside, thinking about Nora, about the escorts being quietly pressured into silence, about an artifact older than the coalition itself, sitting sealed in a container, 3 levels below a chamber full of beings, deciding whether truth is convenient enough to acknowledge. It is done, Kieran says finally, straightening from the terminal. The request has been submitted. Given the urgency I have cited, the review board will be forced to respond within the next several hours, well before your 11-hour window closes. Will Drayan try to block it? I ask. He will try, Kieran says, but blocking a direct request from a sitting ambassador, especially one framed around procedural fairness rather than support for your claims, will draw more attention than he wants. He may allow it simply to avoid appearing as though he fears what it might reveal. And if he does allow it, Lena says, we need to make sure the readings we capture cannot be dismissed as manipulated or incomplete. I want to bring in a second independent monitor, someone with no connection to either side of this dispute. Kieran considers this briefly before nodding. There is a data analyst from the WordHFY delegation, Analyst Perrin Duel, known for meticulous neutrality. He has clashed with Drayan before over unrelated procedural matters. He would have no reason to falsify results in either direction. Can you reach him before the demonstration? I ask. I can try, Kieran says, though understand, involving a third party from another delegation raises the stakes considerably. If this goes wrong, it will not only affect you and Officer Marsh, it will affect me, and potentially, Analyst Duel as well. I know, I say quietly. I would not ask if I believed there was another way. Kieran studies me for a long moment, and for the first time since I met her, I see something closer to genuine curiosity in her expression, rather than cautious diplomacy. You are either the most honest human I have encountered in 11 years of coalition service, she says, or the most convincing liar this council has ever faced. I intend to find out which, Pilot Cole, and I suspect we will both know the answer very soon. The hours that follow move faster than I expect, filled with quiet, careful preparation. Lena works with Analyst Duel remotely, establishing secure channels for the readings, cross-checking equipment calibration, eliminating any possible argument that the results could be manipulated. Kieran manages the delicate political maneuvering required to secure chamber access without alerting Drayan's full network of allies before the demonstration can begin. I spend most of that time simply waiting, which proves to be its own kind of exhausting. I think about the moment on Calvex 7 again and again, replaying every detail I can remember, searching for anything I might have overlooked, any reason the artifact chose to respond to me and not to Nora or the Threll escort standing beside her. As the appointed hour approaches, Lena finds me in a quiet observation deck overlooking the lower containment levels, the same sealed chamber holding the artifact visible far below through reinforced glass. Duel confirmed his attendance, she says. Kieran secured chamber access for the full council, framed as a procedural fairness hearing rather than a defense of your claims specifically. That should limit how much resistance Drayan can openly show without appearing unreasonable. How much time do we have? I ask. Lena checks her slate. 40 minutes until the pulse window opens. I look down at the distant containment chamber, small and quiet, holding inside it either vindication or ruin. 40 minutes, I repeat softly. Are you ready? Lena asks. I think of Nora, of the promise I made to bring the truth back with me, of everything that has led to this single narrow window of opportunity. I have to be, I say. There isn't another option left. Together, we make our way toward the council chamber, the weight of everything ahead of us settling into something steadier than fear, something closer to resolve. The council chamber looks different this time. Where before it felt like a courtroom built to judge me, now it feels like a stage built to judge the truth itself. Every seat is filled. Word of Kieran's procedural request has clearly spread faster than she anticipated, and delegates who were not present at my earlier hearing now watch with sharp, undisguised curiosity. Counselor Drayan sits in his usual position, composed, but I notice the faint tension in the way he holds himself, like a being preparing for a fight he did not choose the timing of. The artifact rests at the center of the chamber floor, still sealed within its containment unit, now surrounded by an array of independent monitoring equipment. Analyst Duel stands near the display terminals, calm and methodical, adjusting the final calibrations alongside Lena. Ambassador Kieran stands near the front, her posture formal, giving nothing away. This session has been convened, Drayan announces, his voice carrying the same flat authority as before. At the formal request of Ambassador Kieran, citing procedural fairness regarding the ongoing review of Pilot Cole's mission report. Independent verification equipment has been installed under the supervision of Analyst Duel of the Osuvi delegation. Let the record reflect that this council extends this demonstration purely as a matter of due process, not as an endorsement of any claim made. Understood, Counselor, Kieran says evenly. I stand near the center of the chamber, close enough to the containment unit that I can see the faint reflection of the room's lights across its surface. 30 minutes remain before the expected pulse, according to Lena's calculations, though I know from experience that waiting for something uncertain always feels longer than the numbers suggest. The sharp-voiced delegate from my earlier hearing leans forward from her seat. Analyst Duel, confirm for the record that these readings will be captured independently, without input from either Pilot Cole or Officer Marsh during the active window. Confirmed, Duel says. Neither will have physical access to the monitoring systems once the window begins. All data will stream directly to a secured archive visible to the full council in real time. Drayan studies the arrangement for a long moment before nodding slightly, satisfied that no obvious manipulation appears possible. The minutes stretch on, filled with quiet technical checks and occasional murmured conversation among the delegates. I stand still, watching the containment unit, feeling the weight of dozens of unfamiliar eyes on me, waiting to see whether I am about to be vindicated or destroyed. At the 18-minute mark, Lena signals to me quietly from across the room, her expression unreadable. At the 10-minute mark, The chamber falls almost completely silent, the earlier murmuring replaced by tense anticipation. At the 2-minute mark, even Drayan has stopped moving, his attention fixed entirely on the containment unit. Then the timer reaches 0, and nothing happens. Seconds pass. The chamber remains silent, watching, waiting. I feel my chest tighten, the first thread of doubt creeping in despite everything Lena's readings had shown. 10 seconds past the projected window. Duel announces evenly, his tone carefully neutral. No detected activity. Drayan's expression shifts, the faintest trace of something close to satisfaction crossing his features. Perhaps the pattern Officer Marsh identified was simply an anomaly in her equipment rather than in the artifact itself. I glance toward Lena, whose focus remains locked on her readings, refusing to accept the silence as final. 20 seconds passed, Duel says. Still no activity. The sharp-voiced delegate speaks again, her tone edged with something close to triumph. Perhaps this demonstration has answered the Council's question after all, though not in the way Ambassador Kieran intended. I feel the walls of the chamber pressing in, the weight of every skeptical gaze doubling in the silence. I think of Nora, of the promise I made, of how close we came to proving the truth, only to watch it slip away in front of everyone. Then, 34 seconds past the projected window, the containment unit begins to glow. It is faint at first, a soft pulse of light barely visible against the chamber's ambient illumination, but it grows steadily brighter, and within seconds every monitoring display in the room registers a spike of activity so significant that several delegates rise from their seats in surprise. Confirmed, Duel says, his neutral tone finally breaking under the weight of what he is witnessing. Energy signature detected, matching, within a fraction of a percent, the emergency data burst recorded during the Calvex 7 incident. Gasps ripple through the chamber, quiet but unmistakable. Drayan's composure falters for the first time since I have known him, his eyes fixed on the glowing containment unit with an expression caught somewhere between disbelief and dawning alarm. The light intensifies further, and then, without warning, the containment unit's reinforced seal releases on its own, the sound sharp and startling in the silent chamber. The artifact rises slightly within its casing, suspended in the air by no visible mechanism, its surface now radiating a soft, steady glow that fills the entire chamber with pale, shifting light. This was not authorized, Drayan says sharply, though his voice carries more uncertainty than command. Analyst Duel, initiate containment protocols immediately. I am attempting to, Duel says, his hands moving rapidly across his controls, but the containment systems are not responding. Whatever is happening, it is originating from the artifact itself, not from any external trigger. I feel my pulse quicken, a strange mixture of fear and something close to recognition. This is exactly what happened on Calvex 7, the same building intensity, the same sense that something ancient and patient had simply been waiting for the right moment to respond. Then, without sound, without warning, an image begins to form in the light surrounding the artifact, faint at first, then rapidly sharpening into unmistakable clarity. It is Calvex 7, the frozen chamber beneath the ice. Nora standing beside the Threll escorts, exactly as I remember her, exactly as I described in every retelling of that day. The entire council watches in stunned silence as the scene plays out precisely as I reported it, moment for moment, detail for detail, with a clarity no recording device in the coalition has ever achieved. I watch myself step toward the artifact in the projection, watch the alarms begin, watch the Threll escorts react in confusion as their instruments fail simultaneously. This is impossible, the sharp-voiced delegate whispers, though her earlier certainty has entirely drained from her voice. The projection continues, and I feel my throat tighten as it reaches the moment I have avoided describing in full detail during every previous hearing, the moment Nora moved to shield me from a structural collapse triggered by the sudden failure of our ship's stabilizing systems overhead. The chamber watches in silence as the sacrifice I described plays out exactly as it happened, without exaggeration, without embellishment, exactly as painful and exactly as brief as I remember it being in reality. When the projection finally fades, the chamber remains silent for a long moment, no one willing to be the first to speak after what they have just witnessed. Ambassador Kieran breaks the silence first, her voice quiet but steady. "Councillor Drayan, I believe this council owes Pilot Cole a formal reconsideration of his testimony." Drayan does not answer immediately. His attention remains fixed on the artifact, still glowing faintly, still suspended within the open containment unit, as though the object itself is waiting to see what the council will decide. "There is more," Duel says suddenly, his readings shifting rapidly across his display. "The energy signature is not fading as expected. It is stabilizing into a new pattern, one my systems are attempting to interpret now." A second projection begins to form, different from the first, older, stranger, showing structures and symbols unfamiliar to me, but clearly recognized by several of the older delegates in the chamber, whose reactions shift rapidly from disbelief to something closer to alarm. "That symbol sequence," Kieran says slowly, her voice carrying a weight I have not heard from her before. "That is Vesserine script, confirmed, catalogued, and sealed under restricted archive access nearly 2 centuries ago." Drayan's composure finally breaks entirely. This session is suspended immediately. All present are bound to confidentiality regarding what has just been witnessed until further notice. "With respect, Counselor," Kieran says firmly, "this artifact has just independently verified Pilot Cole's account before the full council, using evidence no human or Threll technology could fabricate. Suspending this session now, after what we have all witnessed, would only confirm suspicions that this council has been more concerned with controlling information than pursuing truth." Murmurs spread rapidly through the chamber, delegates turning to one another, some in disbelief, others in quiet, urgent conversation. I stand at the center of it all, watching the fading light of the artifact settle into a steady, dim glow, and for the first time since this entire ordeal began, I feel something unfamiliar rising in my chest. Not relief exactly, but the beginning of it. The sharp-voiced delegate, the same one who twice called my account convenient, now stares at the artifact with an expression closer to unease than certainty. "If this technology predates our coalition's founding record," she says slowly, "and if it responded specifically to a human presence rather than any other species present at the site, what does that imply about humanity's history that we do not yet understand?" No one answers her question immediately, and in that silence, I understand that whatever happens next, this council will never be able to treat my report, or humanity's place among them, quite the same way again. 3 days pass before the council reconvenes to deliver a formal decision, and in those 3 days, the station feels like a different place entirely. Officers who once avoided eye contact with me now nod as I pass. Delegates who dismissed my report as fabrication now request private briefings, eager to understand what exactly the artifact revealed. Even Officer Lena Marsh, who took the greatest professional risk of anyone involved, finds herself reassigned, not out of punishment, but to lead a newly formed research division dedicated entirely to studying the object we once called simply the Relic. I stand once again at the center of the council chamber, though this time the atmosphere could not feel more different from my first hearing. There is no hostility in the air, only a kind of cautious, unfamiliar respect, the sort given to someone who has proven something a room full of powerful beings would rather not have needed proving. Councillor Drayan presides once more, though his tone has shifted considerably since our last exchange. "This council formally acknowledges the accuracy of Pilot Cole's original mission report," he says, his voice measured but no longer dismissive. "All prior disciplinary actions taken against him are rescinded, effective immediately. Commander Nora Bennett's sacrifice will be formally recorded and honored within Coalition archives." I feel something ease in my chest at those words, not because I needed the Council's approval to know the truth, but because Nora's contribution to what happened will finally exist somewhere beyond my own memory of her. Additionally, Drayan continues, given the significance of the Vesserine connection revealed during the demonstration, This council has authorized a joint research initiative, drawing personnel from multiple delegations to investigate the full scope of what the artifact represents and what it may reveal about humanity's unexplained relationship to a civilization believed extinct for nearly 2 centuries. Murmurs ripple through the gathered delegates, though this time they carry curiosity rather than suspicion. Ambassador Kieran steps forward, addressing the chamber directly. This council should also acknowledge that Pilot Cole's insistence on transparency, even when doing so placed him at considerable personal risk, ultimately served the coalition's interests far better than the alternative would have. There is a lesson here, one this council would do well to remember the next time a difficult report arrives from an unfamiliar source. Drayan inclines his head slightly, an acknowledgement that costs him visibly more effort than his earlier statements. Noted, Ambassador. After the session concludes, delegates slowly filter out of the chamber, many pausing to offer brief words of acknowledgement as they pass. I remain near the center of the room for a while, simply absorbing the strange stillness of a place that once felt like the site of my downfall, and now feels, oddly, like the beginning of something else entirely. Lena finds me there eventually, her expression lighter than I have seen it since we first met in that maintenance corridor days ago. "You did it," she says. "We did it," I correct. "None of this happens without you noticing that pulse in the first place." She smiles, though something more serious lingers behind it. The research division is already overwhelmed with requests for access to the artifact. Every delegation wants a hand in whatever this becomes, including, unsurprisingly, several who were quick to dismiss you a week ago. "That sounds about right," I say. "There's something else," she adds, quieter now. Preliminary analysis of the Vesserine script suggests references to a species description that doesn't match any current coalition member exactly, but shares certain genetic and behavioral markers with humans specifically. We don't know what it means yet. Duel thinks it could take years to properly translate. I let that settle for a moment, the strange weight of being connected, however distantly, to a civilization that vanished long before humanity ever looked up at the stars and wondered what waited beyond them. "Do you think that's why it responded to me?" I ask. "Because of whatever that connection is?" "I don't know," Lena admits, "but I think we're finally in a position to find out properly, instead of guessing in secret corridors and hoping no one notices." Ambassador Kieran approaches as the last of the delegates leave the chamber, her expression thoughtful. "Pilot Cole," she says. "A word, if you have a moment." "Of course, Ambassador." She studies me for a long moment, the same careful curiosity I noticed during our very first conversation still present, though softened now by 3 days of vindication. "There is a phrase your species uses," she says. "I have heard it referenced in old coalition records, describing early human diplomatic exchanges, though I confess I have never fully understood its meaning until recently." "What phrase?" I ask. "The feeling of finally being heard," she says. "After everything you endured these past weeks, the accusations, the isolation, the risk you and Officer Marsh both accepted to bring this truth into the open, I find myself curious. What does that feeling actually mean to your species, now that you have experienced it firsthand?" I think about the question for a moment, about Nora, about the long, lonely days of being doubted, about standing alone in a chamber full of beings who assumed the worst of me simply because my account did not fit comfortably into what they already believed. "It doesn't erase what it cost to get here," I say finally. "But it means the cost wasn't wasted. It means the next person who stands where I stood, human or otherwise, might not have to fight quite as hard to be believed." Kieran considers this for a long moment, something unreadable but thoughtful crossing her features. "Humanity has always struck this council as unpredictable," she says. "Perhaps that unpredictability has simply been mistaken, all these years, for a species unwilling to settle for silence when the truth remains unspoken. Maybe," I say. "Or maybe we just don't like being told what we saw wasn't real, especially when we watched someone we cared about pay for that truth, with everything she had." Kieran nods slowly, a gesture I have come to recognize as her version of quiet respect. This coalition has much to learn about your species, Pilot Cole. I suspect, after today, more members of this council will be willing to listen properly the next time a human brings forward something difficult to accept. She turns to leave, pausing briefly at the chamber's entrance. For what it is worth, she adds, I am glad the relic verified every word. So am I say quietly, watching her disappear down the long corridor beyond the chamber doors. Lena steps beside me, glancing toward the now empty center of the room where the artifact once rested during the demonstration that changed everything. What happens now? She asks. I think about the research initiative ahead, the unanswered questions about the Vesserine, the strange, unfinished thread connecting humanity to a civilization that vanished long before recorded coalition history began. I think about Nora, and the promise I made to bring the truth home, finally fulfilled in a way I never expected when I first stepped off that ship 3 weeks ago. Now, I say, we find out exactly what humanity's place in all of this really is. And this time, whatever we find, we won't have to fight this hard just to be heard while we look for it. Together, we walk out of the chamber, leaving behind the room where doubt once tried to bury the truth, and stepping toward whatever answers still wait for us among the stars.